Initiative is key. Initiative is underlooked. It's no longer enough to remain competitive by doing what you're told to do or doing what's expected of you, right? You've got to do above and beyond what's expected of you.
How's it going, guys, and welcome to another episode of The Secrets of Silent Success. Today we have the one and only Zachary Williams. How are you doing this Thursday evening?
I'm doing excellent.
Good. So we'll jump right into it. Tell us who Zach is and tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so that's a question. Right? I'm ever evolving as a person.
There you go.
But where I'm from is New York City. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Was fortunate enough to come from a two-parent household. My dad's an immigrant from Guatemala, blue-collar guy, self-made, entrepreneur. He was a mechanic, owned a gas station in the 80s and 90s, so I was able to watch him make something of himself. And my mom's a registered nurse by trade.
Gotcha.
So grew up in a household with the both of them, and they just impressed upon us the importance of education. Didn't matter what you were doing.
Yeah.
They didn't care about your athletic prowess or your athletic endeavors. The core of what we were raised on was the importance of getting your education, because my dad didn't go to college.
Sure.
And so his opportunities were limited to what he could do with his hands. And later on in life, my mom went to college, and so showed us the importance of actually being able to get an education.
Gotcha. So you talked about the importance of education, but you were a top athlete, right? You played basketball at Ohio State, then on the Wright State. How did you balance being that D1 college athlete and your academics, especially when you come from a household who push academics?
Yeah, it wasn't a balance at the time. It's one of those situations where you got to maintain a certain grade point average in order to play. And if you're not actually performing well in the classroom, it's going to serve as a distraction in terms of your ability to actually perform on a basketball court. So for me, it was just about getting into a regimen of doing what needed to be done and adhering to certain disciplines so you can perform at a high level in both places, So it wasn't really real balance. At the time, it was like, nope, this got to get done, so you just do what you got to do.
Gotcha. For any student athletes that may be out there watching, or someone who may be working and trying to manage their studies, what were some of those disciplines and techniques that help you focus and be successful at both?
You know what? It's just being very intentional about both things, right? Because performing in a classroom, you got to put in the time and the effort. That's just the bottom line. There's no shortcut to anything that you're doing, whether it be academically or athletically. And so just availing yourself of the resources that you have. When you play at a high level in college, there's no shortage of counselors and people that are willing to help you with your academics if that's an area where you seem to be struggling. And the same is true in your particular sport of interest. Taking initiative, I think, is something that's undervalued, right? Raising your hand before you're called upon, I would say that's one of the sort of nuggets, if you will, is take initiative both academically and athletically to gain an edge or to move yourself towards the things that you're actually trying to accomplish.
Got you. So I'm sure sports has been and probably still is a big part of your life, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you learned on the playing field at practice that you have applied to be successful in corporate America and in the business world?
Yeah, let me think about that, because I don't want to give you the cliche responses. I think one of the most important things I learned was the importance of preparation. And I'll get a little bit more granular on that. Every single practice was filmed. Every single game was filmed, and film sessions were mandatory. Mm-hmm. So every single thing that we did was scrutinized. And so the preparation and being able to evolve, right, and to take criticism, that's a big one. I think a lot of times you don't develop the ability to take criticisms, and colloquially you think everybody's a hater who's trying to offer you some opposition or perspective other than your own. So I think playing at that level really taught me the importance of preparation, the willingness to take criticism, and to, when you know better, to do better.
Gotcha. So you talk about preparation. Obviously, in sports, that's film study, that's physical practice, that's in the weight room, that's conditioning. What does proper preparation look like on the business side of things?
I think first and foremost, whatever you endeavor to do in business, you got to know your business.
Okay.
You know, you got to know your product, you got to know your service, you got to know your customer, really understand the ecosystem that you're involved in, just like you would in sports, right?
Yep.
The landscape in the baseball and rules and regulations are different than they are in basketball, different in football, and et cetera. So I think business is the same thing. You got to understand the game that you're actually playing.
Yeah.
Before you really focus on drilling down on what your role is per se in that arena, really focusing on what game I'm actually playing, what are the nuances or the rules and regulations that govern this space, so I can then achieve a certain level of mastery in that domain. You got to study. You got to really study your business, you know, and that could be all encompassing with your product, your service, your target demographic, what it is that they want, anticipating their needs, so on and so forth, so that you're prepared for those things.
Gotcha. So you talked about mastery in your domain. And your domain is sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, how did you get into a career in sales?
I mean, I think I felt like I've been a salesman my whole life, right?
Okay.
My dad was the biggest, I think the biggest proponent of getting into sales, because I observed him running his own business as an entrepreneur and how important it was for him to take care of his customers.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize it at the time, but I was observing that dynamic, and there was something about that dynamic that I enjoyed. And my dad was in control of his own destiny. He worked a lot, but he didn't have to answer to anybody. And I liked his ability to be flexible with his time, to be in control of his own money. And so it was something that I admired growing up. But sales, it's one of those things that puts you in the driver's seat, you know, in terms of, you know, achieving some level of financial freedom. Whatever you put in is what you get out.
There you go.
You know, and I loved that whole concept of sowing and reaping. And sales is a perfect, you know, sort of domain for you to actually learn those things in.
Gotcha. So you've had a successful career in sales, and you've actually reached the VP of sales at a major medical company. What was that moment like to get that position?
It was emotional. You know, I enjoyed a good cry on the way home once I received the title of VP of Sales. And, you know, I think more than the title, it was about getting to a level and proving to yourself that there was something that you could accomplish. Because I think everybody who's successful is challenged or plagued with their own insecurities, their own inadequacy, regardless of how they're showing up in the marketplace.
Sure.
It's overcoming those voices within yourself and proving yourself right? It's feel the fear and do it anyway. So that was a very emotional time for me when I received that title and all the stewardship responsibility that came with that. But no, it was definitely an emotional, very serendipitous time, very nostalgic time for me.
Gotcha. Now, you talked about the stresses and expectations that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, you got that position, but how did you deal with that stress and those expectations that came with the position?
You know what? The stress is the stress. I think it's normal.
Sure.
But I didn't really feel any sort of pressure to perform because I realized that it wasn't me doing it on my own. You know, I wouldn't be in the position that I was in if not for the people that I was leading. And if the people, you know, don't feel heard, supported, and appreciated by you, then you're not going to be able to perform anyway. I don't care who you are. And so I learned very early on in my career that the pyramid is actually upside down, right? I'm not at the top of that pyramid. I'm actually at the bottom serving a group of individuals that I'm trying to mobilize towards a very specific outcome. So I just really focused on inspiring, motivating, and leading the people by example where I could. And, you know, I was able to benefit from a lot of the things that we were able to accomplish.
Got you. So you talked about being that VP of sales for a major medical company, and you are a black male that was a VP of sales at a major medical company. What did it mean to you as a black male to be in that position? Because a lot of times it's not people that look like you and I that are sitting at those tables.
Yeah.
So have that opportunity to sit at that table. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, I'd say now in retrospect, I have a better appreciation for what I had accomplished at that time. But while I accomplished it, that really wasn't in the forefront of my mind, right? It wasn't about the lack of representation in the executive positions within that particular domain. I never really even saw it that way. And it's only now in retrospect that I'm like, nah, like you should appreciate actually what you were able to accomplish, because a lot of the people that I used to lead have now since reached out to me, African Americans, and said, you know, I needed to see you. I needed to see an example, someone who looked like me, who I could relate to in that position, to believe that that was something that I could aspire to as well. And so I've now really become a lot more intentional about like, all right, you know, that comes with a certain responsibility of those coming behind you. So it was an amazing feat nonetheless, but I only have an appreciation for it now in hindsight, having done it and you know, represented myself in such a fashion in that arena as an African American.
What are 3 things that you do habitually in the professional realm that you think has aided your success?
3 things that I do habitually. I read. I'm a ferocious reader.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. What have you read lately? What you read?
So one of the books that I read recently was Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
Yep.
And that was amazing. That was eye-opening because I didn't even know about that book. I'd say working out. I'm pretty fanatical when it comes to that. I can almost look at various stages in my life when I'm dialed in to working out and pretty regimented, how that affects how I show up in the workplace. There's a direct correlation to operating suboptimally versus operating at an optimal level when I'm locked in terms of my fitness. So those are really 2 things: reading, working out, and then I say reflection. Reflection is key. You know, doing inventory, really checking in with myself about where I'm at and what's actually going on internally. Because, you know, as a leader, when you're stewarding a large organization or you have people that report to you, you want to be careful not to bleed on them. And if you don't take inventory, whatever's going on in the inside of you, you're ultimately going to transfer to your team. So it's important, you know, self-care, taking inventory and checking in with yourself and seeing what's going on with you, because that dictates how you actually show up in the marketplace.
Sure. You talk about self-care. I think that's important for entrepreneurs, for those in sales, those who are really grinding out there.
Yeah.
How did your days look like when you first got into sales? Was it all work and no play? And how do your days look now? How do you balance?
Yeah. You know what? When I was really getting after it, it was like I celebrated the lack of sleep. You know, it was 5 a.m. every morning. I started a 5 a.m. club. I had a couple of people who would get up at 5 a.m. and we would hold each other accountable. And so I would really get after it. I'd work out at 5 a.m. I'd be out of the gym by about 6:30. By about that time, make a shake, shower, check emails. I'd really try to get all of my things off of my checklist before my team got in the office at 8 or 9 and got up and running, so I could make myself available to solve problems rather than being inundated with all the things that I needed to get done. And then I would burn the candle at both ends, you know, just really work really, really late hours. Now I value sleep. Value sleep. You know, I can't tell you enough how many things that I've been plagued with in terms of problems that I needed to solve that I was able to solve in my sleep, just by getting a good night's rest.
Wow.
Recharging, and certain things would sort of rise to the surface that are actually solutions that are in your subconscious, that if you would just get some sleep, you'd be able to reapproach that situation with a different perspective, completely recharged, and it can change the trajectory of whatever situation that you're in.
So when it comes to sales, there's numbers that you have to hit, right? So
Yeah.
Talk to me about goal attainment. What was your strategies?
Yeah, I think when you have any goal, the key is to figure out a couple of things. This is exactly how I'd manage my team, right? So I'd say step number 1, right? What is the goal, right? What are we actually trying to accomplish and why? Clarify that. I think step 2 is, do you have all of the resources that you need to be successful for the successful attainment of this goal? 3 was, are we clear on the time horizon? Sure. When this needs to be done, right? Once we had established those things, then 4 was, what's the actual plan? What's the actual strategy that we're going to lend ourselves to while in pursuit of this goal? Once you have those sort of 4 bases covered, unless something unforeseen happens, you should typically accomplish the goals that you set out to accomplish. Gotcha. So clarifying what the goal is, why we're actually trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. 2, do we have the resources that we need? 3, is there an agreeable time horizon upon which we need to accomplish that goal? And do we have a plan or a strategy to get there? And so, hoping and wishing and praying doesn't work in corporate America. You have to produce. Yeah. And so those are the 4 things that I typically would employ to make sure that we were successful in hitting our goals. Gotcha. So once you do hit your goals, once you do produce, as you just said, then you have this, I guess, I made it moment, or did you have an I made it moment? And if you did, how did other people reflect upon that? Yeah, I think I made it is a very relative thing. I've come to understand it as such. My I made it moment, I was grinding for so many years, and I'll sort of back up a little bit. So as soon as I got out of college, my goal was always to play in the NBA. I did make it to the NBA. I ended up playing basketball professionally over in Europe. Okay. And when I was in Europe, I played professionally over in Europe for 5 years. So by the time I got back to the United States, I was behind the 8 ball. I was about another 5 or 6 years behind my graduating class. Okay. And so I felt like I had to really work harder to catch up or to close the gap, if you will. And so, I didn't do a whole lot of vacationing. There wasn't a whole lot of drinking taking place. There wasn't a whole lot of going out. Yeah. I was grinding for about 10 years straight. And, the goal was to become a millionaire. And, suffice to say, I had that day where, I checked that bank balance and I was a single digit millionaire for the first time. That wasn't a version of an I made it moment. But it's relative because you strive all of your life to get to a certain point and you realize all right, this newfound appointment in life comes with a different palette, comes with a different lifestyle, comes with different life experiences. And so you're more expansive in your thinking as well as the things that you want now. There you go. So, you keep moving the puck or the goalpost, if you will. But yeah, that was great. That moment with my mom, I hid it from my family for a couple of months, and just sort of coming into grips with, this sort of newfound wealth and what did it actually mean and what was I going to do. But yeah, having that moment with my mom where I was able to open up my bank account and show it to her, and her crying because my mom was one of those people that have always believed in me my whole entire life, and so sharing that experience with her was dope. It was a dope moment for me. You talked a lot about different financial investments and things that you're planning to do. And before the camera started rolling, we were talking about financial literacy, financial independence. What does that mean for you, but also what does it mean for the African-American community and for minorities? You're talking about investing in minority businesses. I didn't even hear the word financial freedom or literacy, so I was out of college, right? Yeah, so what does that mean, and how are you spreading that message? Financial literacy, I'll tell you here, as of late, Earn Your Leisure podcast has been huge. It's like a life class to me and someone basically putting certain financial terms in layman's terms, and packaging it up in a way that is palatable. Because I think the biggest barrier for me in terms of financial literacy in the past has been the lack of trust in financial institutions, financial advisors, so on and so forth. Yeah. Who's the fiduciary? I'm like, do they really have my best interest in heart, or am I going to be misinformed and then, out of a lot of money as a result of it? So I've done a lot of educating myself as far as that's concerned. And then I think too, generationally speaking, you've got to pay it forward. Be willing to educate other people on not only your successes, but your mistakes that you've made, right? So they don't have to step on those landmines as well.
Gotcha. I appreciate your time this evening.
I appreciate your time.
I got one more question for you. You're the sales guy, right? I'm an entrepreneur, so by default I'm in sales. Mm-hmm. What sales strategies do you have?
Sales strategy. No gimmicks, no tactics, no techniques. Do everything in the spirit of candor and everything in the spirit of integrity. If you are showing up authentically as yourself, I think the 4 agreements is perfect for anybody getting into sales and life in of itself, if you're not familiar with it, right?
I've heard it twice in the last 2 days.
You know what? It was one of those things where I'm like, man, I wish I would have wrote that book, because it's be impeccable with your word. Never take anything personally. Never make any assumptions, and always do your best.
Wow.
Like if you just lived your life that way.
Right? That's some core value.
Life would actually, the rest would speak for itself. I'd say when you're in sales, I learned this lesson early on, and it wasn't about getting something, right? I started out that way, right? I got to get this sale. I got to get this sale. I got to make this sale. I shifted. There was a paradigm shift that occurred early on where I started realizing the importance of giving, right? I just simply had to ascertain what it is that this person needed and wanted and connect the dots to what it is that I was actually offering, product or service. So I'd say focus more so on not only just studying your craft, but focusing on your customer, right? Once you figure out what somebody wants and you're in a position to give it to them, you'll always be successful in sales, right? But I think the gimmicks, the tactics, the techniques, and sort of this culture of manipulating people or persuading people to do what you want them to do, as opposed to just making room for an equitable exchange, whereby you help them get what they want. I think once you go into sales with that specific focus in mind, you'll always be successful.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, if you want to get what you want, help enough people get what they want.
Correct.
That's that.
Correct.
Simple.
So, simply profound,
Cool,
man.
That's all I had. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time. Much success and best of luck to you guys with what you're doing. I'm humbled that you guys thought of me for a segment, and look forward to seeing you guys' continued success.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Take care.